The Baldor Dodge hydraulic ISAF-mounted spherical roller bearing is a heavy-duty, large-bore pillow block bearing with a patented integral hydraulic adapter-mounted installation and removal system that makes this bearing easy to mount and dismount. Standard SAF-style bearings, with all of their pieces and parts, are cumbersome and time-consuming to install, often resulting in improper bearing clearance, which leads to reduced bearing life. In comparison, the Baldor Dodge hydraulic ISAF bearing is factory assembled, sealed, and lubricated, and is shaft-ready out of the box, and only takes a fraction of the time to install. More importantly, issues of installation contamination and bearing clearance are eliminated, ensuring longer bearing life and more efficient operations. We are mounting a 5 15/16" hydraulic ISAF pillow block bearing on a Dodge Mind Duty extra pulley for this demonstration. The tools needed for this process include a scribe or marking pen, micrometer, rubber mallet, spanner wrench or drift and hammer, barring rods, hydraulic pump, magnetic base indicator, pry bar, emery cloth, grease gun, torque wrench, appropriately sized box or open end wrench, and M6 hex key for 1/4-18 NPT pipe plug. Begin by removing all of the weight off the shaft. Then inspect the shaft and remove any burrs or rough areas using a file or emery cloth. Then measure the shaft to ensure it is within standard shaft tolerances. Apply a light coating of machine oil or rust inhibitor to the shaft before mounting the bearing. If the inner unit is still within the pillow block housing, remove the top of the housing and lift out the inner unit. Now, remove the lubricatable auxiliary seals, or auxiliary seal and end cover, from the outside diameter of the mount and dismount nuts. Please notice the difference between the mount nut and the dismount nut. The dismount nut has 3 sets of drilled and tapped holes around its perimeter, while the mount nut has equal sets of holes, as well as a mount nut instruction plate. Remove the lock clips located on the faces of the mount and dismount nuts, and save them for later replacement. Next, scribe a line on the adapter and on the face of the dismount nut. Rotate the dismount nut counterclockwise 2 full rotations. The dismount nut should be loose during the mounting of the bearing, but must not be removed. Now, scribe a line on the adapter and on the face of the mount nut. Rotate the mount nut counterclockwise 1 full turn. Tap on the face of the nut with a rubber mallet. This will drive the adapter toward the dismount end and allow the adapter to fully expand. Slide the inboard lubricatable auxiliary seal onto the shaft. The ISAF inner unit must be placed onto the shaft and properly positioned. When mounting both fixed and floating bearings on the same shaft, mount the fixed bearing first, which is normally mounted on the drive end of the shaft. Should the inner unit not slide onto the shaft, loosen the mount nut counterclockwise 1 full rotation and tap the face of it in order to drive the adapter toward the dismount end until the inner unit does slide onto the shaft. Use the end of the shaft to locate the position of the fixed bearing. The fixed bearing can then be used to locate the position of the floating bearing. Once the inner unit is properly positioned on the shaft, use a spanner or barring rod to rotate the mount nut clockwise until the fit is snug. Be careful to ensure that the inner unit does not move out of position on the shaft during this procedure. There are 2 1/4-18 NPT ports in the mount nut. One port is located on the face of the nut. The other is located on its OD, 180 degrees away. Remove the pipe plug from either of the 2 ports and attach the hydraulic pump. Referring to Table 1, find the proper starting position pressure and apply that amount of hydraulic pressure. In the case of the 5 15/16" ISAF, we are applying 220 psi. Once the starting position is reached, place the magnetic base dial indicator on the shaft and position the anvil so it's against the face of the inner unit. Since the inner unit will be moving away from the anvil, be sure it is compressed enough to allow the final position distance to be achieved. Refer again to Table 1 to determine the final position of the inner unit. For our 5 and 15/16 inch ISAF demonstration, the final position is 0.038 of an inch from the starting position. Increase pump pressure until the dial indicator shows the appropriate movement. In the event that pump pressure reaches 3000 psi and the final position has not been reached, abort the procedure by releasing the pressure on the hydraulic pump. Then check to ensure the dismount nut is still loose. If it is not, rotate the nut one turn counterclockwise and repeat the pumping procedure. Do not reset the dial indicator and continue to the final position. Release the pressure on the pump by opening the release valve. Remove the magnetic base dial indicator. Using a barring rod, rotate the mount nut clockwise until it's once again snug. This will allow the hydraulic fluid to return to the pump. Remove the pump from the nut and reinstall the pipe plug. If the hydraulic port on the nut OD was used, make sure the pipe plug is below the face of the nut. This will prevent damaging the lubricatable auxiliary seals when they are installed later. The mount nut has equal sets of holes, and the adapter has 4 slots. Find the combination that requires the least rotation. Be very careful to always rotate the nut clockwise in this step. Do not loosen the nut once the final position is attained. Now, using a spanner or drift and hammer, rotate the mount nut clockwise until a lock clip can be inserted into one of the adapter slots and aligned with the drilled and tapped lock clip holes. Insert the lock clip and tighten the lock clip bolts. Finally, from the dismount side of the bearing, rotate the dismount nut using a barring rod until it is snug. If the holes are not aligned, rotate the dismount nut counterclockwise. In this case, loosen the nut until the first set of holes align with the adapter slot. Install the remaining lock clip into an adapter slot, which lines up with drilled and tapped lock clip holes. Tighten the lock clip bolts. As the bearing is pre-lubricated at the factory, no further lubrication is needed, and installation of the fixed non-expansion inner unit is complete. For a fixed non-expansion bearing, include the stabilizing ring over the mount nut. It can be placed on either side of the bearing, but the standard is on the mount nut side. Installation procedures for the expansion bearing are the same as for the non-expansion bearing, except you do not install the stabilizing ring. Now, install the lubricatable auxiliary seals onto the OD of the mount and dismount nuts. Next, seat the bearings into the housings, making sure to align the seals with the seal grooves in the pillow block housing. Place the housing caps over the bearings. Then tighten the cap bolts according to the torque values specified in Table 3 of the instruction manual. Grease the seals through grease fittings atop the housing, located directly over the seals. Now the bearing is completely installed. If an end cover is preferred on one side, a seal is not required. Place the end cover in the pre-existing seal grooves. It is not necessary to grease the end covers. Alignment is critical for the hydraulic ISAF bearing. The bearing has a misalignment capability of plus or minus 1/2 degree. Exceeding this value will cause the lubricatable auxiliary seal to collide with the housing. Alignment of these bearings is simple. With the same magnetic base dial indicator used in mounting the bearing, place the magnetic side on the shaft. Place the anvil of the indicator on the machined flat of the housing, right above the lubricatable auxiliary seal at the 9 o'clock position. Zero out the indicator and rotate the shaft so that the anvil is now at the 3 o'clock position. Record the readings from dial indicator. If the value is less than the value on the alignment table found in the instruction manual, the bearing is aligned in the 9 to 3 o'clock position. Do the same procedures for the 12 to 6 o'clock positions. For the 5 and 15/16 inch bearing, the alignment reading needs to be within 0.085 of an inch. If the reading is outside of the allowable misalignment, additional alignment is required. If the alignment is off in the 12 to 6 o'clock position, make sure the base the bearing is mounted on is flat and free from any debris. If needed, shims can be used to assist with the flatness. If the bearing is misaligned in the 9 to 3 o'clock positions, simply tapping on the pillow block in the correct direction will align the housing. After realigning the pillow block, sweep the face of the housing again in the same 9 to 3 o'clock and 12 to 6 o'clock positions to ensure alignment. Dismounting the hydraulic ISAF is just as quick and easy as mounting. After removing the inner unit from the housing, remove the lubricatable auxiliary seals and locking tabs from the mount and dismount nuts. Scribe a line on the adapter and mount nut faces. Using the line as a reference, rotate the mount nut 2 full turns counterclockwise. Using a barring rod, spanner, or drift and hammer, it is important that the mount nut remain loose during the dismount procedure. Using a spanner or barring rod, rotate the dismount nut clockwise until snug. Remove the pipe plug from either of the 2 hydraulic ⅛ NPT ports on the dismount nut. Then, attach the hydraulic pump. Actuate the hydraulic pump until the initial pressure rises sufficiently to break the adapter away from the inner race of the bearing, and the pressure decreases to 0. This may require repeated pump actuations. Once the pressure reaches 0, the bearing is fully dismounted. Should the hydraulic pressure ever reach 3000 psi, abort the procedure. Release the pressure to the hydraulic nut by opening the release valve on the pump. Check to ensure the mount nut is still loose. If not, rotate 1 turn counterclockwise and repeat the previous step. Release the pressure on the pump by opening the release valve and rotate the dismount nut clockwise until snug. This allows the hydraulic fluid to return to the pump. Next, remove the pump from the nut and reinstall the pipe plug, ensuring it's below the OD of the nut. This will prevent damage to the lubricatable auxiliary seals. Now the bearing should slide easily off the shaft. In all cases, the hydraulic ISAF will replace existing open-end SAF dimensioned bearings. Since the mounting dimensions are the same, merely replace the existing pillow block housing assemblies with the new ones. If you are trying to replace a closed-end SAF, contact Dodge Engineering. This concludes the mounting and dismounting demonstration of the Baldor Dodge hydraulic ISAF bearing. For further information, please refer to the hydraulic ISAF instruction manual, MN3007.